The chain came whistling through the air at Cole Barrett's face, and for the first time in 5 years, the retired Special Forces captain remembered what combat felt like. Behind him, May's diner trembled as motorcycle engines roared intimidation through the dust. In front of him, 9 bikers spread into attack formation. The waitress was crying. The town was bleeding. And somewhere between the handicapped parking lines and the broken salt shaker, Cole Barrett decided that respect was something you earned, never something you extorted. Stay with me until the end, and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The I-40 stretched like a gray ribbon through eastern Oklahoma, and Cole Barrett's 18-wheeler hummed its familiar song, that low diesel growl that had become his meditation over the last 5 years. The cab smelled like truck stop coffee and the lavender air freshener his daughter had tucked behind the visor last Christmas. His hands rested easy on the wheel, scarred knuckles relaxed, though his eyes never stopped scanning. Old habits. The sign appeared through the heat shimmer Maple Ridge. Next exit. May's Diner. Best pie in 3 counties. Cole's stomach made the decision before his brain did. He'd been rolling for 11 hours straight, and his back was starting to remind him that 42 wasn't 22 anymore. The exit ramp curved off the interstate, and within 2 minutes the world transformed from highway thunder to small-town quiet. Maple Ridge looked like it had been frozen in 1987 and forgot to thaw. Main Street consisted of maybe 15 buildings, a hardware store with sun-bleached awnings, a bank with actual brass fixtures visible through the window, a post office that doubled as the town's gossip exchange. And there, sitting like a chrome and neon beacon, was May's Diner. Cole's rig rumbled into the parking lot, and that's when his situational awareness, the kind the Army had beaten into him over 12 years of deployment, kicked into overdrive. 6 motorcycles, Harley-Davidsons mostly, customs with high handlebars and extended forks. They were sprawled across the front of the diner like territorial markers, and 3 of them were parked directly on the blue handicapped spaces, paint lines be damned. Cole cut the engine and sat there for a moment, watching. Through the diner's windows he could see movement leather vests, bold gestures, a waitress backing away from a table with her shoulders hunched in that universal posture of someone trying to become invisible. His phone buzzed. Text from Marcus, his old teammate. "Where you at, Maple Ridge? Quick food stop. Stay sharp. Heard things about that area." Cole pocketed the phone and climbed down from the cab. His boots hit the pavement with a solid thud. He was a big man, 6'3" and 220, with the kind of weathered face that came from too much sun and too many things he couldn't unsee. His flannel shirt was worn soft. His jeans had honest holes at the knees, and everything about him said trucker, except for the way he moved. Smooth, balanced, ready. He crossed the parking lot, noting details. The bikes were black Vipers. He could see the serpent patches on the seats. The one parked in the first handicapped spot had a license plate from Texas, scratched and mud-obscured, probably on purpose. The front tire of another was bald enough to fail inspection in any state with actual laws. The diner's door had a cheerful bell that chimed when he pushed through, and the sound cut through the tension like a knife. Inside, the world crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. The black Vipers occupied the back third of the diner, 9 of them all wearing cuts with the serpent logo coiled and ready to strike. They sprawled across 2 tables and 3 booths, taking up space like an occupying army. Empty beer bottles clustered despite the "no alcohol" sign on the wall. Cigarette smoke hazed the air, even though Oklahoma had banned indoor smoking 15 years ago. At the center sat their leader, had to be. He was a thick man with a shaved head, a beard braided with silver rings, and eyes that had probably never looked at another human being and seen anything worth respecting. His vest had Reaper stitched across the back in letters big enough to read from space. To his left was a wiry guy with arms sleeved in faded ink serpents and skulls, and the kind of prison tattoos that told a story Cole had read too many times before. His patch said, Riptide. To the right sat a younger one, maybe mid-20s, with the kind of face that was trying too hard to look dangerous. Fresh leather. New boots. Blade on his vest, like he'd chosen it himself from a list of action movie names. The waitress name tag said Ellie was Vietnamese-American, probably early 30s, and her hands were shaking as she held a coffee pot. She caught Cole's entrance, and something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, exactly. More like the recognition that the equation had just changed. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair pulled into a practical bun, and shoulders that had carried every burden this place had ever thrown at her. May Whitaker, if the May's Diner sign was any indication. Her jaw was set. Her eyes were hard, and she was gripping a dish rag like it was a lifeline. In the corner booth, the one with sight lines to both exits, Cole noted with professional appreciation sat a black man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a folded newspaper. He looked up when Cole entered, and their eyes met for exactly half a second. Another operator. Cole knew it the way you knew the smell of rain before it fell. This man had the same stillness, the same controlled breathing, the same way of cataloging threats without seeming to move his head. Ex-military, probably medical corps, based on the small Red Cross pin on his collar. Dr. Jonah Pike, if Cole had to guess from the local reputation Marcus had mentioned once. The moment stretched. The bikers were watching him now the way predators watch prey that might be too big to bother with. Cole chose his path carefully. Not the direct route to the counter, which would take him through their territory, but around the perimeter claiming a corner booth that gave him the same advantages Jonah had both exits full room view, wall to his back. He slid into the seat, his bulk filling the space, and picked up the menu like he had all the time in the world. Ellie approached Coffee Pot, trembling slightly. "Welcome to May's," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Coffee." "Please." Cole's voice was gravel road smooth, the kind of calm that came from knowing exactly how bad things could get, and deciding not to let them. "And whatever pie you recommend." "The apple's good today," Ellie said, and there was the ghost of a smile trying to break through her fear. "Apple it is!" From the back of the room, laughter erupted, too loud, too performative. Reaper was holding court, and his voice carried like he wanted the whole county to hear. "Look at this fat fuck," he said, not even bothering to lower his volume. "Probably can't even see his own dick past that gut." Riptide cackled. "Needs 2 seats just for his ass." Blade was watching Cole's reaction, hungry for it. The room went quiet. Even the kitchen sounds seemed to pause. Cole looked up from his menu, his expression unchanged. He met Reaper's eyes across the diner, held them for a 3 count, then went back to reading about the daily specials like the man had commented on the weather. It was the most disrespectful thing he could have done. Reaper's face darkened. He wasn't used to being dismissed. "Hey, truck stop, I'm talking to you." Cole glanced up again this time, with the faintest hint of a smile. "I heard you," he said. "I just didn't hear anything worth answering." Jonah Pike's newspaper rustled as he set it down slowly, deliberately. His hands moved to the table edge, visible ready. May stepped out from behind the counter, her voice cutting through with the authority of someone who'd been keeping order in this place for 30 years. "Reaper, you and your boys keep it respectful, or you find another place to park yourselves." Reaper's laugh was ugly. "Respectful," That's cute, May. Real cute. He stood up his chair, scraping back. Maybe you forgot how things work. We're customers. We have rights. Rights include basic human decency, May shot back, but Cole could hear the hairline fracture in her voice. She was brave, but she was also scared. These men had probably been bleeding her establishment dry, one intimidation at a time. Cole's coffee arrived. Ellie's hands were shaking so badly that the cup rattled against the saucer when she set it down. A few drops splashed onto the table. "Sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Cole looked up at her, and his voice was gentle. "Nothing to apologize for. Thank you, Ellie." She blinked, surprised that he'd used her name, that he'd treated her like a person in a room full of men who clearly didn't. And that's when Riptide made his move. He reached over as he walked past their table and knocked the salt shaker onto the floor. It hit the linoleum and shattered white crystals exploding across the tile. "Oops," Riptide said, his grin showing tobacco-stained teeth. "Better clean that up, sweetheart. Wouldn't want anyone to slip." Ellie stood frozen for a heartbeat, then knelt down to gather the pieces, and the bikers erupted into laughter, the kind of laughter that was designed to dehumanize, to establish hierarchy, to make it clear who had power and who didn't. Jonah folded his newspaper with precise movements, each crease deliberate. His eyes met Cole's again, and in that glance was an entire conversation. "How far does this go?" "As far as it needs to." "You ready?" "Always." Cole sipped his coffee, watching Reaper over the rim of his cup. The biker was sizing him up the way an alpha wolf sizes up a challenger. Cole knew what he was seeing. A big guy, sure, but soft around the middle. Now probably slow, definitely past his prime. Just another trucker who'd let the road wear him down. Let him think it. Reaper started walking toward Cole's booth, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His boys spread out behind him, not overtly threatening yet, but positioning themselves. Blade moved toward the door. Riptide angled to cut off the path to the counter. A third one, skinny, tweaker-thin vest, said "Coil," circled toward the kitchen. Classic encirclement. Reaper stopped at Cole's table, looming. He put both hands on the Formica, leaning in, and Cole could smell the beer and cigarettes and unwashed leather. "This is my booth," Reaper said, his voice low and dangerous. "Find somewhere else to park your fat ass." Cole didn't move. His body language stayed relaxed, but his mind was cataloging everything. Reaper's right hand had a bulge near the belt. Probably a .38 snub-nose typical biker backup piece. Riptide had a chain on his belt doubled with a weight on the end. Blade was green nervous, which made him unpredictable, and therefore the most dangerous in close quarters. "I'm comfortable here," Cole said. His voice was still calm, still carrying that quiet authority that came from having led men into gunfire and brought most of them home. "But I appreciate the suggestion." Reaper's face went purple. Nobody dismissed him. Not in his territory. Not in front of his men. The other bikers began to close the semicircle, and May's voice cracked across the room. "Reaper, so help me God, shut it, old woman." Reaper didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on Cole, and Cole could see the calculation happening. How much violence could he get away with? How hard could he push before consequences arrived? And did this trucker have anyone who'd care if he disappeared? Cole's hands rested on the table, visible, non-threatening. But his weight had shifted imperceptibly, his left foot now braced against the booth's support beam, his right knee bent at an angle that would let him explode upward if needed. His coffee cup was ceramic heavy, a decent improvised weapon, if it came to that. It probably would come to that. Reaper reached out slow and deliberate and flicked Cole's coffee cup. It tipped dark liquid spreading across the table, dripping onto Cole's jeans. "Oops," Reaper said, his smile vicious. "Looks like you need to leave anyway. Get yourself cleaned up." The diner bell chimed. Every head turned. The figure in the doorway was backlit by the afternoon sun. Just a silhouette, at first 6'4", maybe 230, with shoulders that suggested hard labor and harder living. He stepped inside, and the light caught his face. Cole's entire body relaxed in a way that only happened when backup arrived. Marcus Hall. 30 years of friendship meant they could communicate in glances. Marcus took in the scene, the semicircle of bikers. Cole's wet jeans, Ellie on her knees cleaning up salt. Jonah's ready posture. May's white-knuckled grip on her dish rag, and his jaw tightened. "Cole," Marcus said, his voice carrying the gravel of too many years smoking cigars in dusty countries. "Thought that was your rig outside." "Marcus." Cole's smile was genuine, now warm. "Been a while?" "6 months. You still owe me $50 from that poker game in Amarillo." "I owe you, brother, your memory's going in your old age." Marcus walked into the room, and he walked like Cole walked, like someone who'd been trained to kill efficiently and had decided to spend the rest of his life not doing it unless absolutely necessary. His eyes swept the bikers, cataloging, assessing, dismissing. 2 operators. The math had just shifted, and Reaper knew it. Whatever advantage he'd had in numbers was now compromised by the sudden appearance of another man who moved with the same dangerous quiet as the trucker he'd been planning to humiliate. Reaper stepped back from Cole's table, his smile now forced. "You boys have a reunion. We'll catch up later." It was meant to sound casual, but everyone in the room heard it for what it was, a tactical retreat, not a surrender. The threat was just being postponed. The bikers filtered back to their tables, but the energy had changed. Blade kept glancing at the 2 truckers. Riptide was whispering something to Coyle. Reaper pulled out his phone and typed something, his expression dark. Marcus slid into the booth across from Cole. "You always this good at making friends? It's a gift." Cole grabbed some napkins and mopped at the spilled coffee. "What are you doing here? Thought you were running routes through Kansas." "Detoured. Had a feeling you might need an extra set of eyes." Always the psychic. Ellie brought more coffee, and this time her hands were steadier. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking at both of them. "Nothing to thank us for," Marcus said. "Yet." May came over her professional mask, finally cracking to show the exhaustion underneath. "You boys want food on the house?" "We'll pay," Cole said, "but we'll take whatever you recommend." She nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. "They've been here for 3 weeks," she said, her voice low. "Every day. Longer every day. They don't pay for half of what they order. They scare away the good customers. I've called the sheriff, but Chief Ramos says unless they actually do something." She stopped, her throat working. "I'm losing this place, one piece at a time." Jonah had migrated over, bringing his coffee cup. He stood next to the booth, and up close Cole could see the old scars on his hands, surgical precision mixed with combat roughness. "Dr. Jonah Pike," he said, extending a hand to Marcus. "Combat Medic 75th Rangers 82 to 91. Marcus shook at recognition, lighting his eyes. "Marcus Hall, Delta 88 to 2010. "Cole Barrett," Cole added. "Special Forces 98 to 2015. Jonah's smile was grim. "Thought I recognized the posture. You don't stand like that unless you've had someone shoot at you while you're standing." "Or while you're sitting," Marcus added. "Or eating, or sleeping." "Mostly while sleeping," Cole agreed. It was gallows humor, the kind that men who'd seen too much used to keep the darkness at bay. May was still standing there, and now tears were tracking down her cheeks, though her voice stayed level. "I'm not asking you to fight my battles. I know that's not fair. But if you have any ideas, any way to make them leave without—" She trailed off. "Without violence," Jonah finished. "Without making it worse." Cole looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Jonah. Jonah looked at Ellie, who was watching them with something that might have been hope. "First thing," Cole said, "is we document everything. Ellie, you have a smartphone." She nodded. "Start recording. Time-stamped videos, photos, audio if you can do it safely. Every threat, every act of vandalism, every violation. Build a case." "Chief Ramos won't act on that," May said bitterly. "I've shown him, not for Ramos," Marcus cut in. "For state police, for federal if it comes to it. These guys aren't just local trouble. That much swagger, that kind of organization, they're connected to something bigger." Jonah was nodding. "I'll start logging their patterns. When they arrive, how long they stay, who they talk to. We establish their routine, we can predict their moves." "And us?" May asked, looking at Cole and Marcus. Cole's smile was cold. "We're just truckers passing through, but we've got time before our next hauls. Thought we might enjoy some of that famous pie." Outside, through the diner windows, they could see Reaper on his phone, pacing his gestures aggressive. He looked back at the diner at the windows where Cole and Marcus sat visible, and his expression promised violence. The sun was starting to set, painting Maple Ridge in shades of amber and shadow. In the parking lot, the black Vipers were mounting their bikes' engines, roaring to life one by one. But they weren't leaving. They were just repositioning, spreading out across the lot, making a show of their presence. Ellie brought the pie, 2 slices generous portions with ice cream, melting into the cinnamon-spiced apples. Her hands were steady now. "Best pie in 3 counties?" Marcus asked. "Absolutely," Ellie said, and this time her smile reached her eyes. Cole took a bite. It was good, really good, the kind of homemade quality you couldn't fake. "Worth stopping for," he said. Through the window, Reaper made a slashing gesture across his throat pointed at the diner, then at his eyes the universal sign for "I'm watching you." Cole raised his fork in a casual salute and took another bite of pie. Marcus chuckled. "Subtle. Not my strong suit." Jonah sat down in the booth, uninvited, but welcome. "They'll be back tonight," he said. "Maybe not to start something, but to probe, test boundaries, see if you're still here, or if you were just passing through." "Then we'd better still be here," Cole said. May was listening from behind the counter, and something in her posture shifted, not quite hope, not yet, but maybe the first fragile shoots of it. "You'd do that? Stay." "We've got time," Marcus said. "And besides, your pie really is good." The bikers were rolling out now, a thunder of engines and exhaust, but as they left Coyle, the skinny tweaker stayed behind. He went to the dumpster behind the diner, and Cole watched through the window as he pulled something from his vest. Spray paint. The hiss carried even through the glass. When Coyle rolled away, the dumpster bore fresh graffiti, a coiled serpent, and the words, "Vipers feed here." "Territorial marking," Jonah said quietly. "They're claiming this place." "Not if we have anything to say about it," Cole replied. Night was falling on Maple Ridge, and in May's diner, 4 people, a trucker, his old teammate, a doctor, and a waitress, began planning a defense that none of them were sure would work. But they'd faced longer odds before. And somewhere on a burner phone, Reaper was making calls to people who didn't like being told no, and the stakes were rising faster than any of them realized. The quiet rig was about to make some noise. The first thing Cole did was walk the perimeter. Marcus stayed inside with May and Ellie, his presence alone enough to keep the peace for now. Jonah had gone home to gather what he called his documentation kit, cameras, notebooks, the kind of meticulous record-keeping that had kept soldiers alive when intelligence was the difference between an ambush and an advantage. Cole moved through the darkness around May's diner like a ghost, his boots silent on the gravel. The parking lot lights cast yellow pools that didn't quite reach the edges of the property, and he noted every shadow, every blind spot, every approach vector. The dumpster with its fresh serpent graffiti sat near the back door. 2 propane tanks for the kitchen were chained to the wall, but the chain was old rusted security theater, not actual security. The fence line behind the property had 3 places where the wire sagged low enough for easy crossing. Vulnerabilities everywhere. He pulled out his phone and started taking photos, building a mental map. When he rounded the corner near the kitchen door, he found something that made his jaw tighten, fresh boot prints in the dust leading to the electrical panel. The metal door hung loose on its hinges, and someone had scratched marks around the main breaker. They'd been testing how to kill the lights. Cole photographed it all, then headed back inside. The diner was nearly empty now, just May wiping down tables with methodical determination, Marcus nursing his 3rd coffee, and Ellie counting tips that probably didn't amount to much. "Found something," Cole said, sliding his phone across the counter to May. She looked at the photos, and her face went pale. "When?" she asked. "Recent. Last day or 2 based on the dust patterns." Marcus stood up his chair, scraping back. "They're not just harassing. They're planning." "Planning what?" Ellie's voice was small, frightened. "Escalation," Cole said. "They've been testing you, May, seeing how much you'll take, but they're also doing reconnaissance. That electrical panel, they wanted to know if they could cut your power, make you vulnerable." May's hand shook as she set down her dish rag. I can't afford security. I can barely afford to keep the lights on as it is." "You don't need to afford it," Marcus said. "You've got us." The door chimed, and all 3 of them tensed, but it was just Jonah returning with a weathered backpack. He set it on the counter and started pulling out equipment, a small HD camera with night vision, a portable hard drive zip ties for cable management, and a notebook that looked like it had survived a war. "Trail cameras," Jonah said, holding up 2 camouflaged devices. "Hunters use them for deer. We'll use them for vipers. Motion-activated infrared 7-day battery life. I've got 4 of them." "Where'd you get military-grade surveillance gear in Maple Ridge?" Marcus asked, eyebrow raised. Jonah's smile was grim. "I didn't. I've had this stuff since '92. Always figured it might come in handy if the skills ever needed dusting off." Over the next hour, they turned May's diner into something approaching a secure position. It wasn't Fort Knox, but it was better than the wide-open target it had been. Jonah mounted cameras covering the parking lot, the back entrance, and the electrical panel. Ellie set up her phone on a charging dock behind the counter, angled to capture the main dining area, recording continuously to cloud storage. Cole and Marcus worked on the physical vulnerabilities. They reinforced the electrical panel with a padlock May found in her storage room. They repositioned the dumpster to eliminate a blind spot. They even adjusted the outdoor lighting angles so that anyone approaching from the road would be silhouetted before they could see inside. "It's not perfect," Cole said, stepping back to survey their work. "But it's harder. That's what matters. Make them work for it. And maybe they decide it's not worth the effort." "Or maybe they bring more friends," Ellie said quietly. Nobody had an answer for that, because she was right. May locked the front door at 10 o'clock, an hour earlier than usual. "Can't afford to stay open if there's no customers anyway," she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. 3 weeks ago I'd have 20 people in here this time of night. Truckers, locals, kids from the high school getting pie after football practice. Now," she gestured at the empty room, "now it's just ghosts and fear." Cole was about to respond when Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his expression darkened. "Text from Danny Chen. He runs routes through here twice a week. Says he just heard on the CB that the Vipers are setting up fake road debris on County Road 12, forcing trucks to slow down, then shaking them down for protection money to clear the path. That's extortion, Jonah said. That's organized crime, Cole corrected. This isn't just a biker gang causing trouble. They're running an operation. Ellie had gone still, her face pale in the fluorescent light. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything before because I was scared, but... She pulled out her phone, hands trembling, and pulled up a photo. 2 nights ago, I stayed late to clean. I heard voices by the dumpster. I took this through the back window. The photo was grainy shot through glass in low light, but it showed 2 figures. One was definitely Coyle, his skeletal frame unmistakable. The other was harder to make out, stocky, wearing a hoodie face turned away from the camera. But in his hand was a phone, and on the phone's screen, visible just barely in the image, was what looked like a spreadsheet. Can you enhance this? Marcus asked Jonah. Not like the movies, but I can try. Jonah took the phone and peered at the image. This second guy, he's not dressed like a biker. Look at his shoes. Those are Merrill hiking boots, probably $200. His jacket's North Face. He's not road trash. He's something else. Management, Cole said. The Vipers are foot soldiers. This guy's giving orders. May had been listening, growing paler with each revelation. This is bigger than I thought. This is God, what have I gotten into? What have I gotten you all into? You didn't get into anything, Marcus said firmly. They chose you, probably because you're on a main route, good location, established business. They want to use you as a base or bleed you dry or both. The lights flickered. Everyone froze. The lights flickered again, then steadied, but the message was clear. Someone was testing the electrical panel, even with the new padlock. Cole moved to the window, staying in the shadows. In the parking lot, barely visible in the ambient light, a figure stood near the side of the building. Too dark to make out features, but the posture was familiar. Confident. Unhurried. The figure raised something, a phone maybe, and a light flashed. Taking a photo. Then the figure walked away, dissolving into the darkness beyond the streetlights, and a motorcycle engine roared to life somewhere in the distance. They know we're here, Jonah said. They know we're fortifying. Good, Cole said. Let them know. Let them think about what it means that we're not running. But Ellie was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face now. You don't understand. They don't just threaten. Last month they went after Jimmy Brennan. He owns the auto shop 2 blocks down. He told them to get lost. The next day his shop had a small fire. Electrical problem, the fire marshal said. But Jimmy knew. Everyone knew. He paid them $500 a week after that, just to be left alone. Did he report it? Marcus asked. To who? Chief Ramos? May's laugh was bitter. Ramos is a good man, but he's got 2 deputies for a town of 800 people. The county sheriff's department is stretched thin across 4 towns. State police won't touch it without evidence of a felony. And these guys, she gestured toward the window, toward the darkness where the Vipers lurked. They're careful. They never leave evidence. Just fear and broken people. Cole's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Heavy breathing. Then a voice electronically distorted. You should have kept driving, trucker. Should've, could've, didn't, Cole replied, his tone conversational. Who's this? Someone who's giving you a chance to leave with all your parts still attached. You and your friend. Get in your rigs and roll out before sunrise, and we forget we saw you. And if we don't... The laugh that came through was cold, empty of humor. Then May's diner gets a new paint job. Red, from the inside. The line went dead. Ellie had both hands over her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. May had gone sheet white. Even Jonah looked shaken, his military composure cracking just slightly. Marcus broke the silence. Well, that was direct. Sloppy too, Cole said, already pulling up his phone's recent calls. Burner number, sure, but they called from close by, probably within a quarter mile for the cell tower to route it here this fast. He was texting as he spoke, sending the number to a contact from his old unit who'd gone into private security and had access to tracking tools that weren't strictly legal, but were effective. You're really not leaving, are you? May asked, and there was something in her voice, not quite belief. Not yet, but the seed of it. No, ma'am, Cole said. We're not. Why? The question came from Ellie, raw and genuine. You don't know us. This isn't your fight. Why risk yourself for a diner in a town you've never heard of? Cole was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years and losses and moments when he'd had to choose between the easy path and the right one. Because I spent 12 years fighting for people I'd never meet in countries I could barely pronounce. And when I came home, I realized the fighting doesn't stop just because you take off the uniform. It just looks different. He met her eyes. Someone has to stand up. Might as well be us. Marcus nodded slowly. Plus, the pie really is that good. Despite everything, Ellie laughed, a short, sharp bark of sound that was half sob, half release of tension. Jonah was at the window now, watching the darkness. We need more help. 4 people can't hold a position against a determined assault, not for long. We need community support. The town's terrified, May said. You saw the empty diner. Everyone's scared to even be associated with me. Then we change the equation, Marcus said. We make it scarier to stay silent than to stand up. Cole's phone buzzed response from his contact. The burner number had pinged off a tower near Highway 12, exactly where Danny had reported the road debris. They were coordinating using the intimidation call as cover while they worked their extortion racket on the county road. They're multitasking, Cole said, showing the others. Threatening us while bleeding truckers dry 5 miles away. This is professional-level organization. Which means there's money involved, Jonah said. Real money. They're not just shaking down a diner for fun. This is part of something bigger. The next morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that made the previous night feel like a fever dream. But the evidence was real, the photos, the recordings, the threat still echoing in their minds. May opened the diner at 6 a.m., and for the first hour, it was just the 4 of them and the smell of coffee and bacon. But at 7:15 the door chimed, and Chief Andrew Ramos walked in. He was a lean man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of face that had seen too much small-town tragedy, domestic calls, meth busts, kids wrapping their cars around trees on prom night. He wore his uniform like it weighed too much, and his eyes went straight to Cole and Marcus, with the cop's instinctive assessment strangers capable potentially trouble. May, he said, nodding to her. Then to Cole and Marcus, you 2 are the truckers who decided to set up camp. Just passing through, Cole said evenly. Good pie. Ramos didn't smile. I got a call this morning. Anonymous. Said there was going to be trouble at May's, and I should control the outside agitators before someone gets hurt. He paused. You boys wouldn't know anything about that, would you? We know the Vipers have been running protection rackets, damaging property and threatening citizens, Marcus said. We know May's been asking for help and not getting it. Ramos's jaw tightened. You think I don't want to help? You think I like watching this town get bled dry? I've got 2 deputies, a budget that barely covers gas for the cruisers, and a district attorney who won't prosecute without evidence that would make a Supreme Court justice weep with joy. He turned to May. Every time you've called, I've responded. Every time you've shown me damage, I've filed a report. But reports don't stop men like Reaper. Arrests do. Convictions do. And I can't get either without something that'll stick in court. Then we'll get you something that sticks, Cole said. Ramos studied him for a long moment. You military was. Special forces, I'd guess. You've got that look. Ramos pulled out a chair and sat down uninvited, and there was a weariness in the gesture that spoke to battles fought and lost. I was Army too. MPs, Iraq, 2004. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking you can handle this the way you handled insurgents in Fallujah or Helmand or wherever you served. You're thinking training and tactics will overcome numbers and desperation. You're wrong about one thing, Marcus said. We're not thinking about handling this like insurgents. We're thinking about handling it like evidence. Build a case document, everything, force the system to work the way it's supposed to. And if the system doesn't work, Ramos asked. Then we protect innocent people, Cole said simply. That's not negotiable. Ramos was quiet, and behind his cop's mask, something was calculating, deciding, choosing. Officially, I can't condone vigilante action. Officially, I'm telling you to let the law handle this and not take matters into your own hands. He stood up, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a business card. He wrote something on the back and slid it across the table to Cole. Unofficially, that's my personal cell. If you happen to witness any crimes in progress, or if you happen to gather evidence that meets prosecutorial standards, you call that number immediately. Cole took the card. The back read, document everything. Timestamps, multiple angles, audio if possible. There's something else you should know, Ramos continued, his voice dropping. The Vipers aren't just local. We've had reports from 3 counties about similar operations, protection rackets, road extortion, property damage. It's coordinated. Someone's running them like a franchise. You have any leads on who? Jonah asked. Ramos hesitated, then shook his head. Nothing solid, just whispers about a guy called Montoya, or Fernando. Name changes depending on who you ask. He's supposedly the broker, connects supply chains with distribution, takes a cut from everything. But he's a ghost. No one's seen him, or if they have, they're too scared to say. The name hung in the air like smoke. You think the Vipers work for him? Cole asked. I think the Vipers work for whoever pays them. And I think that whoever it is has enough reach to make witnesses disappear and evidence vanish. Ramos moved toward the door, then stopped. Be careful. You're not in a war zone anymore. The rules are different here. Are they? Marcus asked quietly. Ramos didn't answer. He just walked out the door, chiming behind him, and May let out a breath she'd been holding for what felt like hours. He can't help us, she said. Not really. But he won't stop us either, Cole replied. That's something. The morning crawled forward, and around 9 o'clock, the first trucker arrived. A woman in her 40s with road-weary eyes and a rig that said she'd been hauling freight since before GPS was standard. She looked around the empty diner at Cole and Marcus at the new cameras, and her expression went from wary to knowing. Heard something on the CB, she said to May. Heard the Vipers were claiming this place. Heard a couple of boys were pushing back. Just getting some pie, Cole said. The trucker, her name tag said Rita, smiled. Right, pie. She sat down at the counter, deliberately visible from the windows. I'll take a slice of whatever's good, and I'll be here for about an hour. Got some logbook entries to catch up on. It was a statement, a declaration, I'm not afraid. By 10 o'clock, 2 more trucks had pulled in. By 11, there were 5. They didn't make speeches or organize. They just parked their rigs in a protective L shape around the diner's front, a wall of steel and chrome, and came inside for coffee and food, and the unspoken solidarity of people who spent their lives on the road and recognized when someone was making a stand. May moved through the diner like she was waking from a dream, taking orders, pouring coffee, and every now and then her eyes would water, and she'd have to turn away to compose herself. It's working, Ellie whispered to Cole. People are coming back. But Cole was watching the road, and his instincts, honed by years of reading terrain and enemy movements, were screaming. At 11:47, the Vipers rolled in. 9 bikes. 10. 12. More than had been there yesterday, and they didn't park in the lot. They lined up on the street, blocking both lanes, engines rumbling in a coordinated show of force. Reaper was at the front, and behind him were faces Cole didn't recognize, reinforcements brought in from God knows where. The truckers inside went quiet, but none of them moved to leave. Reaper dismounted and walked toward the diner with the swagger of someone who'd never lost a fight because he'd never fought fair. He pushed through the door, and the bell's cheerful chime was obscene in the sudden tension. "Well, well," Reaper said, looking around at the occupied tables at the truckers who met his eyes without flinching. "Look at this, a regular convention. May you throw a party and forget to invite us?" "You're not welcome here, Reaper," May said, and her voice didn't shake. "Not anymore." Reaper's smile was a predator's smile. "Not welcome. That's funny. Real funny." He turned to Cole and Marcus. "I thought I told you boys to roll out." "Must have slipped my mind," Cole said. The Vipers were filing in now, spreading out, and the diner was suddenly very full, very tense. Riptide took position near the kitchen door. Blade moved to block the exit. 2 new faces, one with a scarred face and a prison yard stare, another with gang tattoos crawling up his neck, positioned themselves near the windows. "Here's how this works," Reaper said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "This is our territory. We say who comes, who goes, who pays. And right now—" He pulled out a folded piece of paper and slammed it on the counter. "May here's got a health code violation. Seems the inspector found some problems yesterday. Real serious problems. Could shut her down pending review." May grabbed the paper with shaking hands. It was official-looking, complete with a county seal, and it cited violations that were completely fabricated rodent droppings in the storage room, expired food in the freezer, unsanitary conditions in the kitchen. "This is fake," she said, her voice breaking. "This is fake." Reaper's laugh was ugly. "Tell that to the county. Tell them you're refusing to comply with health and safety regulations. See how that works out for you." Jonah stood up slowly from his booth. "The inspector who supposedly filed this, what's his name?" Reaper glanced at the paper. "Reynolds, County Health Inspector Reynolds." "There is no Inspector Reynolds in this county," Jonah said calmly. "I know because I sit on the County Health Board. This document is a forgery, which makes it fraud, which makes it a felony." The room went very still. Reaper's smile faded. "You calling me a liar, old man?" "I'm stating a fact." Ellie's hand moved slowly toward her phone, still recording on the counter. She adjusted the angle slightly, making sure it caught Reaper's face, the fake document, everything. Reaper saw the movement. His eyes locked on the phone, and something dark and violent rose in his expression. "You recording this, sweetheart?" "It's her phone," Cole said, his voice cutting through before Reaper could move toward Ellie. "Not your business." "Everything here is my business," Reaper snarled. He lunged for the phone, but Cole was faster. The trucker was up and moving his body between Reaper and Ellie in a heartbeat, and his hand caught Reaper's wrist mid-reach with a grip that made the biker's face go white. "Step back," Cole said quietly. The Vipers moved as one, closing in, and the truckers stood up from their tables, forming a line. Marcus was already in position, his back to Cole's, creating a defensive circle around Ellie and May. Rita, the female trucker, had her phone out and was live streaming. "Y'all watching this?" she said to her camera. "This is May's Diner in Maple Ridge, and the Black Vipers are threatening violence against civilians. Timestamp 11:53 a.m., October 6, 2025. "You want to make this public?" Reaper hissed. "You have no idea who you're messing with." "Then educate me," Cole said, releasing Reaper's wrist, but not stepping back. Tell me about Montoya, or Fernando. Tell me about the distribution network you're protecting. Reaper's face went from red to white to purple in the span of a breath. You don't say that name. You don't... He caught himself, fury and fear warring in his expression. Too late, Marcus said. We already did. And now it's on camera. Live, streaming to about 200 truckers across 6 states. Rita's phone showed the viewer count climbing 250, 300, 350. Reaper looked around, realizing the trap he'd walked into. Every move he made was being documented. Every threat was being recorded. The power dynamic he'd relied on, fear, isolation, silence, was crumbling in real time. This isn't over, he said, but his voice had lost its edge. You have no idea what you've started. Then we'll finish it, Cole replied. The Vipers retreated, filing out one by one, their engines roaring to life in a chorus of impotent rage. They peeled out tires, screaming, leaving rubber on the asphalt, and fury in their wake. The diner erupted in a collective exhale, and someone started clapping. It spread a ripple of applause that was part relief, part defiance, part disbelief that they'd actually stood their ground, and won at least for now. But Cole wasn't celebrating. He was watching the road where the Vipers had disappeared, and his mind was already 3 moves ahead, anticipating the retaliation, planning the defense, knowing that this wasn't a victory. It was just the beginning of the war. The celebration lasted exactly 17 minutes. That's when May's cell phone rang, and the banker's voice on the other end was apologetic, but firm. There'd been some irregularities with her loan application for the new freezer unit, and the bank needed to reassess her creditworthiness. Could she come in tomorrow? No. Actually, could she come in today? Within the hour would be best. May's hands were shaking when she hung up. I've had that loan approved for 3 weeks. The freezer's being delivered Friday. I already put down the deposit. Cole and Marcus exchanged glances. The Vipers weren't just coming at them directly, they were hitting from angles using leverage points most people wouldn't even think to defend. They're connected, Jonah said, voicing what everyone was thinking. Bank manager, fake health inspector, road crews who look the other way when debris appears. This network runs deep. Rita and the other truckers were packing up their solidarity real, but their vulnerability equally so. They had routes to run loads to deliver lives that couldn't be put on hold indefinitely. We'll spread the word, Rita promised as she headed for the door. Every truck stop from here to Tulsa will know what's happening in Maple Ridge. You won't be alone in this. But as the trucks rolled out one by one, the diner felt emptier, more exposed. The protective wall of chrome and steel disappeared, leaving just May's modest building standing alone against whatever storm was coming. By 2 in the afternoon, the pump at May's single gas island stopped working. The display screen went dark, and when Jonah opened the panel, he found the wiring had been carefully, professionally cut, not torn or yanked, but snipped with precision. Sabotage that looked just enough like equipment failure to give plausible deniability. That's another $200 a day, May said, staring at the dead pump. I can't afford to fix it. I can't afford any of this. Ellie was inside going through the receipts from the morning rush, the first real business they'd had in weeks. We made $600, she said, and there was hope in her voice until she did the math. But if the pump's down, if the bank pulls the loan, if the fake health violation sticks... She trailed off the numbers, telling a story of slow strangulation. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from Danny Chen, the trucker who'd warned them yesterday Vipers just blocked Route 12 again. 3 rigs stuck. They're demanding $200 each to clear the path. One driver tried to push through, they slashed his tires. All 4. Marcus read over Cole's shoulder and swore softly. They're escalating. Going after the whole corridor, not just May's. Which means this was never just about a diner, Jonah said. Maze is strategic central location, main route, established business. They want to own this intersection, control the flow. Anyone who stops here pays tribute. The fence behind the property was cut that night. Cole found it during his 3 a.m. perimeter check, a clean slice through the chain link wide enough for a person to slip through. Nothing had been taken. Nothing damaged beyond the fence itself. It was a message. We can get in whenever we want. He was photographing the damage when his phone rang. Unknown number again, but this time no electronic distortion, just a voice he didn't recognize, smooth, educated, with the faintest trace of an accent that could have been anywhere from Guadalajara to Madrid. "Mr. Barrett," the voice said, and Cole's blood went cold because this person knew his name. "You're making things complicated." "Who is this? Someone who would very much like you to reconsider your current course of action. The Vipers are useful tools, but they're just tools. I, however, am the hand that wields them, and I'm extending you a professional courtesy. Leave Maple Ridge, and you leave intact. All of you. The doctor, the veteran, the waitress, the diner owner. Walk away, and this ends peacefully." Cole's mind raced. The voice was too calm, too confident. This wasn't Reaper's barely controlled rage. This was someone who saw human beings as chess pieces, problems to be solved with the most efficient amount of force. "And if we don't?" The pause was calculated, theatrical. "Then May's Diner becomes a cautionary tale. I'm told you have a daughter, Mr. Barrett. Emily, isn't it sophomore at Oklahoma State, majoring in engineering? It would be unfortunate if her college experience was disrupted by unforeseen circumstances." The threat hit like a physical blow. Cole's daughter. They'd researched him, found his pressure points, and gone straight for the jugular. "You touch her." "I won't have to touch anyone, Mr. Barrett. That's the beauty of civilization. Consequences find us all on their own. Student loans can be called in. Scholarships can be mysteriously revoked. Accidents happen in parking lots late at night. Or, and here the voice turned almost friendly, they don't happen at all. Your choice. You have until tomorrow evening to decide." The line went dead. Cole stood in the darkness behind May's Diner, his hand gripping the phone so hard the case creaked, and for the first time in 5 years, he felt the old rage building, the kind that had made him effective in combat and dangerous out of it. They'd threatened his daughter, crossed the one line he'd never forgive. But rage was useless without discipline. He forced himself to breathe, to think, to plan. Inside, he found Marcus still awake, nursing coffee at the counter. One look at Cole's face, and Marcus was on his feet. "What happened?" Cole told him everything. The voice, the threat. Emily. Marcus's jaw tightened. "We need to get her somewhere safe. Now." "Already on it." Cole was texting his ex-wife, keeping it vague but urgent. "Emily needs to stay with your sister in Wichita for a few days. Don't ask questions, just trust me. I'll explain later." The response came back within minutes. "What's going on, Cole?" "Please, trust me. I'll call you in the morning." A pause. Then she's already at her aunt's for fall break. Has been since Thursday. The relief was physical weakening. His daughter was safe, at least for now, but the message was clear: they could reach her if they wanted to. They knew enough to make the threat credible. "This Montoya, or Fernando, or whoever he is," Marcus said, "he's not playing around. That was a professional threat. Specific, credible, designed to maximize fear while maintaining deniability." Jonah emerged from the back room where he'd been catching a few hours of sleep. He took one look at them and knew. It got worse. They filled him in, and his expression grew grimmer with each detail. "He's escalating because we backed him into a corner. That live stream, the documentation, Chief Ramos getting involved, it's threatening his entire operation. So he's going nuclear, trying to force us out before we can do real damage. The question is, Cole said, do we fold or do we push harder? The silence stretched. They all knew what folding meant. Maple Ridge would fall. May would lose her diner, the Vipers would own another corridor, and Montoya's network would grow stronger. But pushing harder meant putting everyone at risk, and the threats were no longer abstract. May's voice cut through from the doorway. They hadn't heard her come downstairs from her apartment above the diner. "You're thinking about leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "May," Cole started. Don't try to soften it. I heard enough." She walked to the counter, her bathrobe wrapped tight, her face lined with exhaustion and something harder underneath. "You've done more than anyone had a right to ask. You stood up when no one else would. If you need to go to protect your families, I understand. I do." "But," Marcus prompted gently, "but if you go, they win. Not just here, everywhere. Because if they can break this stand, they can break any stand. And the next town, the next business, the next person who tries to fight back will remember that even soldiers with training and courage eventually had to run." She looked at each of them in turn. "I'm not asking you to stay. I'm just telling you what it means if you don't." Ellie had appeared too drawn by the voices. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I should have told you before, but I was scared." She pulled out her phone and brought up a video, the one from 2 nights ago, but she'd been working on it, adjusting the contrast, zooming in. "I enhanced it as much as I could. The second man with coil, I think I know who he is." She hit play. The grainy footage showed the 2 figures by the dumpster, and in one frame, when the hoodie shifted, a face became partially visible. Stocky build, dark hair, a distinctive scar running from his ear to his jaw. Jonah went pale. "That's Neil Hutchins." "Who?" Cole asked. "Used to work at the county clerk's office. Quiet guy, always seemed nervous. He quit about 6 months ago, said he was moving to Kansas City for a better job." Jonah leaned closer to the screen. "If that's him, if he's working with the Vipers, then he had access to county records," Marcus finished. "Property deeds, business licenses, loan applications, personal information on every resident. He could have given Montoya a complete intelligence package on Maple Ridge." "He's the inside man," Cole said. "That's how they knew where to hit, who to threaten, what leverage points to use. He handed them the keys to the kingdom." Ellie was nodding. "After I took this video, I did some digging. Neil's not in Kansas City. I found his social media. He posted a photo from a bar 3 weeks ago. The geotag says he's still in Oklahoma, just 2 counties over." "Can we find him?" Marcus asked. "Maybe, but what good does it do? He's not going to confess, and this video isn't clear enough for a conviction." Cole studied the image, thinking, "We don't need a conviction. We need leverage. If we can find Neil, talk to him, maybe he's not as committed to this as we think. Maybe he's scared too, got in over his head, and would flip if given the chance. Or maybe he runs straight to Montoya and tells him we're on to them," Jonah countered. "That's a risk," Cole admitted. "But right now we're reactive. They hit us, we defend. We need to go on offense, and Neil's our only lead to the bigger organization." Dawn was breaking over Maple Ridge, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed obscene given the darkness of their situation. May made coffee with hands that had stopped shaking, not because the fear was gone, but because she'd pushed through it to something harder, more determined. "I'm staying," she said. "This is my place, my life, and I'm not letting them take it." "Then we're staying too," Cole said, and Marcus and Jonah nodded. But Ellie was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. "I want to stay. I want to fight. But I have a son. He's 6 years old, and if something happens to me..." She looked at May with breaking eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I can't risk him losing his mom." May crossed to her and pulled her into a fierce hug. You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. Your son needs you. That's all that matters. I can still help from a distance, Ellie said, pulling back and wiping her eyes. I'll keep monitoring social media, enhancing footage, coordinating with the truckers. But I can't be here, not physically, not when they've shown they'll go after families. She left an hour later, her car packed with essentials, heading to her sister's place, 3 states away. May watched her go with a face like stone, and Cole knew what she was thinking, another piece of her world chipped away by fear. The day crawled forward with the weight of waiting. Chief Ramos stopped by around noon, his face grave. Got word from state police. They're interested in what's happening here, but they need more. They need the convoy, the distribution network, something that connects the Vipers to Montoya directly. Right now, all we have is circumstantial. What about the threats? Marcus asked. The fake health inspection, the sabotage, all deniable. The health inspection document is a forgery, but we can't prove who created it. The sabotage could be equipment failure, their lawyer would argue that. And threats over the phone. Ramos shrugged helplessly. Without voice identification or wiretap authorization, it's he said, she said. So what do we need? Cole asked. Live documentation of a crime in progress, preferably a felony. State police want to move on this, but the DA won't authorize resources without something concrete. Ramos lowered his voice. There's talk of a convoy coming through. Major shipment using the Vipers as security and intimidation. If we can catch that on camera, link it directly to Montoya, we might have a case. When? Jonah asked. Soon. Could be tonight, could be 3 days from now. My contact says Montoya's getting nervous about the attention, wants to move his assets before we can build a real investigation. After Ramos left the 3 of them, Cole, Marcus, and Jonah sat in the empty diner and planned. May had gone to the bank fighting to save her loan, and the silence in her absence was profound. We need Neil, Cole said finally. He's the weak link. If we can get him to talk, give us details on the convoy, maybe even testify. That's a big if, Marcus said. He's already shown he's willing to betray his community for money. What makes you think he'd flip? Because everyone has a price, Jonah said quietly. And sometimes that price is redemption. They spent the afternoon tracking Neil Hutchins. Ellie had sent them everything she'd found, social media posts, check-ins, patterns of behavior. He frequented a bar called the Dusty Boot in a town called Redford, about 40 miles east. Posted photos there at least twice a week, always between 8 and 10 p.m. We approach him there, Cole said. Public place, lots of witnesses. He can't run, can't escalate without drawing attention. And if he refuses to talk, Marcus asked, then we make it clear he's already in our footage, that when this goes to trial, his face will be everywhere. We offer him a choice, help us now, and maybe catch a break, or go down with Montoya and spend the next decade in federal prison. It was a bluff, mostly. The footage wasn't clear enough for definitive identification. But Neil didn't know that, and fear was a powerful motivator. The sun was setting when May returned, and her face told the story before she said a word. They killed the loan, said my business model was unsustainable, and they couldn't risk the investment. She laughed, a bitter sound. 30 years I've run this place. 30 years of payments on time profits steady, and now suddenly I'm unsustainable. Montoya got to them, Jonah said. Of course he did. May sat down heavily. The bank manager, he wouldn't even look me in the eye. Just kept saying it was a business decision, nothing personal, like my whole life is just a number on a spreadsheet. Cole's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, but he knew who it was. Tick-tock, Mr. Barrett. Have you made your decision? Leave tonight or face the consequences tomorrow. You have 12 hours. He showed it to the others. 12 hours, Marcus said. That's specific, which means something's happening in 12 hours. The convoy maybe... Or an attack, Jonah said. Force us out before we can interfere with their operation. May looked at them, and her eyes were dry now, past tears into the territory of cold determination. What do you need from me? Your trust, Cole said. And your courage. We're going to find Neil tonight, get him to talk. If we can connect him to Montoya, give Ramos and the state police enough for a warrant, maybe we can end this before it gets worse. And if you can't, Cole met her eyes, then we defend this place with everything we have, and we make them pay for every inch. The drive to Redford took 45 minutes, and they used the time to prepare. Marcus drove an anonymous rental car they'd picked up that afternoon, nothing to connect it to them. Cole rode shotgun going over their approach, while Jonah sat in back monitoring police scanners and trucker CB channels for any sign of Viper activity. The Dusty Boot was exactly what its name suggested, a working-class bar with neon beer signs in the windows and a parking lot full of pickups and motorcycles. Not Harley Customs like the Vipers rode, but working bikes, the kind that got you to the job site and back. There, Marcus said, pointing to a figure visible through the window. Stocky build, dark hair, and when he turned to grab his beer, the scar was visible even from the parking lot. Neil Hutchins. They waited until he stepped outside for a cigarette, then approached from different angles Cole from the front. Marcus circling to cut off retreat, Jonah hanging back as observer and witness. Neil, Cole said, his voice conversational, non-threatening. Got a minute? Neil's head snapped up, and the fear was instant visceral. His cigarette fell from his fingers. I don't know you. But you know why we're here. Cole kept his distance hands visible. We need to talk about Maple Ridge, about the Vipers, about Montoya. The name hit like a slap. Neil went white, then looked around frantically for escape routes. Marcus stepped into view, blocking the path to the parking lot, and Neil's shoulders sagged. I can't, he said, his voice breaking. You don't understand. If I talk, I'm dead. My family's dead. He stopped, swallowing hard. Montoya? Cole asked gently. Neil's nod was barely perceptible. Here's the thing, Neil. You're already in trouble. We have footage of you meeting with the Vipers, accessing county records, planning acts that are going to be prosecuted as organized crime. When this breaks, and it will break, you're going down. The only question is how hard you fall, and how many people you take with you. I didn't want to, Neil said, and now he was crying, tears streaming down his face in the amber light of the bar's exterior. I didn't want any of this, but I had gambling debts and they said they'd kill me, and then they offered me money to just give them information. Public records, they said. Nothing illegal, just help them understand the area. But it didn't stop there, Jonah said, stepping forward. They wanted more, and every time you gave it to them, you got deeper. Neil nodded miserably. I gave them everything. Property records, business licenses, personal data. I even told them about May's loan application, about the health inspection schedules, about Chief Ramos's budget limitations. I sold out my whole town for, he laughed bitterly, for $20,000 and the promise they'd leave me alone. They never leave you alone, Marcus said. That's not how this works. You know that now. What do you want from me? Neil asked, looking at Cole with desperate eyes. The convoy. When is it? What's the route? What are they moving? Neil's face went even paler, if that was possible. If I tell you, he'll know. He has people everywhere. Cops, county officials, people you'd never suspect. He'll know it came from me, and we can protect you, Cole said, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. Chief Ramos is solid. State police are ready to move. You give us what we need, we bring down Montoya's operation, and you testify. Witness protection plea deal, a chance to start over. You can't protect me from him, Neil said. You don't know what he is. He's not just some criminal. He's a ghost, No one's even sure Fernando Montoya is his real name. He runs operations in 6 states, and anyone who crosses him just disappears. There was a guy in Texas tried to skim from a shipment. They found pieces of him scattered across 3 counties. The door to the bar opened, and a group of men stumbled out laughing drunk. Neil used the distraction to bolt, shoving past Marcus and running for the parking lot. But Marcus was faster, catching him in 3 strides and pinning him against a truck with practiced efficiency. "Let me go," Neil struggled, but it was useless against Marcus's combat-trained strength. "Listen to me," Cole said, moving close. "You're out of options. You either help us now and maybe salvage something from this mess, or you run and Montoya finds you anyway. Because here's what you don't realize, we're not the only ones who've figured out you're the leak. The state police know, and when they move, they'll come for you first. So you can deal with us and maybe get protection, or you can deal with them and spend the next 20 years in federal prison looking over your shoulder every second wondering when Montoya's people will get to you." Neil stopped struggling. His breathing was ragged, his face slick with sweat and tears. "He's moving a shipment tomorrow night," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Midnight. Using Route 12 and then cutting through Maple Ridge. The Vipers provide security, make sure the roads stay clear. It's pharmaceuticals mostly. Prescription pills heading to distribution points in Missouri and Kansas. The whole convoy's worth maybe $2 million. "How many vehicles?" Marcus asked. 3 SUVs, maybe 4. Plus the Vipers on bikes, could be 20 of them for a shipment this size. "And Montoya, will he be there?" Neil's laugh was broken. "He's never there. That's the point. He orchestrates everything from a distance. But—" He hesitated, then pushed forward like a man jumping off a cliff. "But his lieutenant will be. Guy named Reyes. He's the one who handles the high-value shipments, makes sure everything goes smooth. If you can grab Reyes, force him to talk, maybe you can get to Montoya. Maybe." Cole and Marcus exchanged glances. This was bigger than they'd thought. Not just a local gang, but a multi-state operation with millions of dollars at stake. "Where will they stop?" Jonah asked. "They have to transfer the shipment somewhere, loaded onto different vehicles to throw off tracking." Neil nodded. "May's Diner. They were going to use the parking lot, clear sightline central location, and by tomorrow night they figured May would be too scared to interfere. They've been softening her up for weeks, making sure she'd just look the other way when the time came." The pieces clicked together. This was never about extortion. The protection money, the threats, the intimidation, it was all preparation. They wanted May broken and compliant so they could use her property as a transfer point for a major shipment. "We need to call Ramos," Cole said, already pulling out his phone. "No," Neil grabbed his arm. "Not on cell phones. Montoya has someone monitoring police frequencies, maybe even phone taps. You call Ramos and Montoya knows within minutes." "Then how do we coordinate?" Marcus asked. "In person, face to face. It's the only way to be sure." They drove back to Maple Ridge in tense silence. Neil huddled in the back seat like a man who'd just signed his own death warrant. Maybe he had. But at least now they had a chance, a real chance to end this. May was waiting at the diner, and when they walked in with Neil, her face went hard. "You," she said, her voice like ice. "You did this to us. You gave them everything." "I know," Neil said, unable to meet her eyes. "I know, and I'm sorry, and I know sorry isn't enough, but I'm trying to make it right." "You can't make this right," May said. "You can only try to stop it from getting worse." Chief Ramos arrived 20 minutes later, alone, having been contacted through a circuitous route that involved Jonah driving to his house and knocking on his door. When Neil laid out everything, the convoy, the timing, the route, Reyes's involvement, Ramos's expression cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally grim determination. "This is it," he said. "This is what we need. I'll contact state police, but we have to be smart about it. No phone calls, no radio chatter. I'll drive to their headquarters, brief them in person." How long will that take? Cole asked. 3 hours, maybe 4. Then they need to mobilize, get a tactical team in position, coordinate with DEA because pharmaceuticals make this federal. Ramos looked at his watch. We're cutting it close. If the convoy moves at midnight tomorrow, we have less than 24 hours to set up. They'll have scouts, Neil said. They always do. They'll be watching the roads looking for unusual police activity. If they smell a trap, they'll abort, and Montoya will just set up somewhere else. Then we make it look normal, Marcus said. No roadblocks, no obvious staging. State police come in as truckers, undercover cars blend into the background. And when the convoy arrives at Mays, he looked at Cole. We're already in position. You're not law enforcement, Ramos said. I can't authorize you to engage. You're not authorizing anything, Cole replied. We're just citizens who happen to be in the area. If we happen to witness a crime in progress, if we happen to have the training to respond appropriately, he shrugged. That's just coincidence. Ramos stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I didn't hear that. I wasn't here. And if this goes sideways, I never approved any of it. Understood. After Ramos left racing toward State Police Headquarters, the 4 of them, Cole, Marcus, Jonah, and a terrified Neil sat in May's diner and planned for a battle that would determine whether Maple Ridge fell or stood. May brought coffee, her hands steady now, and Cole realized something had shifted in her. The fear was still there. He could see it in her eyes, but it was contained, controlled, transformed into something harder and more useful. What do you need from me? She asked. Your property, Cole said. We turn this place into a trap. When they arrive, when they think they're safe and in control, we close the net. Outside, the night was deep and quiet, but somewhere out there, gears were turning. Plans were being made, and in less than 24 hours, Maple Ridge would either break free or break completely. The quiet rig had made its stand. Now came the test of whether that stand would hold. The next 18 hours moved like a fever dream, too fast and too slow at the same time. Cole spent the pre-dawn hours running through scenarios in his mind, the kind of tactical planning that had kept him alive in Kandahar and Mosul. But this wasn't Afghanistan. These were American streets, civilian rules of engagement, and the cost of mistakes wouldn't just be his own life. But May's, Jonah's, Marcus's, and everyone else in Maple Ridge who'd trusted them to do this right. By 6 a.m., Jonah had converted May's office into a command center. He'd pulled out topographical maps of the area, marked sightlines, escape routes, choke points. His combat medic training showed in the methodical way he cataloged every detail, where the nearest hospital was, how long ambulance response would take, what supplies they'd need if someone got hurt, and professional help was still minutes away. We're outgunned, Jonah said, staring at the map. 20 bikers, 4 SUVs, unknown number of armed personnel. Even with state police backup, the first few minutes will be us alone against them. Then we don't engage in the first few minutes, Marcus said. We observe, document, wait for the cavalry. Our job isn't to be heroes, it's to be witnesses who can defend themselves if necessary. And if they start shooting before the cavalry arrives? Jonah asked. The silence that followed was answer enough. May was in the kitchen cooking breakfast for what felt like the last time. Eggs, bacon, pancakes. The smell was almost obscene in its normalcy, like the world wasn't about to crack open in her parking lot. Neil sat at the counter, his hands wrapped around a coffee mug, looking like a man waiting for his execution. I should run, Neil said quietly. Get out of state, disappear. Because when Montoya finds out I talked, he already knows someone talked, Cole interrupted. The question is who? Right now he's probably suspecting the Vipers. Maybe Ramos, maybe us. But if you run, you confirm it was you. You paint a target on yourself that'll follow you for the rest of your life. And if you stay, and this works, You're a witness against an organized crime network. Federal protection, new identity, a chance to actually survive this." Neil laughed bitterly. "Survive? Right. Because witness protection is foolproof and Montoya's people never find anyone." "They don't find everyone," Marcus said. "And the ones who run, they all get found eventually. At least this way you're taking a shot at putting him away first." Around 8 a.m., the first unusual activity appeared. A pickup truck drove past the diner 3 times in 20 minutes, different driver each time, but the same deliberate pace, the same careful observation. Scouts checking the area, making sure everything looked normal for tonight's operation. Cole watched from behind the curtain, memorizing faces, plate numbers, vehicle descriptions. "They're nervous," he said. "Good. Nervous people make mistakes." By 10 o'clock, the farmers started arriving. They came in pickup trucks and tractors, men and women who'd heard through the rural grapevine that May was making a stand and needed support. They didn't know about the convoy, didn't know about the plan, but they knew that May's diner had been a fixture of their community for 3 decades, and if she was fighting, they'd fight too. "We heard you might need some light," said Tom Henderson, a corn farmer whose land bordered the highway. His pickup bed was loaded with portable floodlights, the kind used for night harvesting. "Figured we could set up a perimeter, make sure nobody sneaks up on you in the dark." May's eyes filled with tears. "Tom, you don't have to—" "Yeah, we do," interrupted Sarah Chendani's cousin who ran a cattle operation 5 miles out. "This is our town too. We're tired of hiding." Within 2 hours, they'd transformed May's property into a fortress of light. Floodlights positioned at every corner powered by portable generators. The farmers didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations. They just worked silent and determined. And when they were done, May's diner was lit up like a night game at a baseball stadium. "They'll see this from space," Marcus muttered. "That's the point," Cole said. "Darkness was their advantage. We just took it away." Chief Ramos returned at noon, his face drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes sharp. "State police are in," he said, keeping his voice low. "Tactical team DEA agents, the whole package. They're staging at a rest stop 15 miles out, waiting for my signal. They'll come in as a convoy of trucks looks normal, for this route won't spook the scouts." "When do they move?" Jonah asked. 11:30. That gives them time to get in position before midnight. They'll have eyes on the diner by 11:45, but they won't be visible. Unmarked cars, plainclothes officers blending into the background. When the convoy arrives and starts the transfer, we move. Ramos looked at each of them in turn. "But here's the thing. If shooting starts before they're in position, you're on your own for at least 10 minutes. Can you hold for 10 minutes? Cole thought about it. 3 of them with combat experience against 20 bikers and an unknown number of cartel enforcers. 10 minutes of sustained engagement without backup, without the firepower advantage, without the legal authority to do much beyond defend themselves. "We can hold," he said, hoping it was true. The afternoon crawled by with the weight of a death march. May tried to keep busy, but there wasn't much to do. The diner was as ready as it would ever be. The cameras were recording. The lights were positioned. All that remained was waiting. Around 3 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. He stepped outside to take it, and when he came back in, his face was ashen. "That was my daughter," he said. "Someone just tried to grab her from the grocery store parking lot in Tulsa. 2 men, black SUV, no plates. She screamed and they bolted, but—" He looked at Cole with fury and fear warring in his eyes. "They went after my kid, my baby girl." The room went silent. This wasn't just about May's diner anymore. This wasn't about Maple Ridge or some abstract concept of justice. Montoya had made it personal, had threatened their families, and the equation had fundamentally changed. "Is she safe?" Jonah asked quietly. "Police have her now. She's scared, but unhurt. They're taking her to a safe house, keeping her under protection until this is over. Marcus's hands were shaking with rage. I'm going to end this, tonight, whatever it takes. We end it the right way, Cole said firmly. We don't become what we're fighting. We hold the line. We gather the evidence. We let the law do its job. And if the law isn't enough, then we make it enough. Neil had been listening from his corner, and now he spoke up, his voice trembling. There's something else I didn't tell you, about Reyes Montoya's lieutenant. He's not just muscle, he's a true believer. Ex-military like you guys, but he went dark side. Dishonorable discharge for excessive force did some time came out worse. He handles Montoya's enforcement personally. If things go wrong tonight, if he thinks the operation's compromised, he's authorized to eliminate all witnesses and burn everything to the ground. Define burn everything, Jonah said. I mean literally. He carries accelerants in his vehicle. The standing order is if a location gets compromised, you torch it and disappear. No evidence, no witnesses, no trail. May's face went pale. He'd burned down my diner with people inside. He's done it before, Neil said miserably. Arkansas, 2 years ago. A truck stop that was being used as a transfer point got raided. Reyes was there. By the time fire departments arrived, the whole place was ash. 3 people died. They couldn't prove it was arson, said it was electrical, but everyone knew. Cole felt ice forming in his gut. They weren't just planning to intercept a convoy. They were planning to confront a war criminal who wore civilian clothes and had no hesitation about mass murder. We need fire suppression, Jonah said immediately. Extinguishers, hoses, anything that can combat accelerant fires. The farmers mobilized again. Within an hour, they'd brought fire extinguishers from their barns, connected hoses to May's water supply, even positioned a water truck used for crop spraying near the property line. If Reyes tried to burn the diner, they'd be ready. But the preparations felt inadequate against the growing dread. They were civilians playing soldier, and their enemy was a professional killer backed by an organization that had survived decades by being more ruthless than anyone else. As the sun began to set, painting Maple Ridge in shades of amber and shadow, Ellie called. She was safe in her sister's place, but she'd been monitoring the situation through social media and trucker networks. The Vipers are gathering, she said, her voice crackling through the speakerphone. I'm seeing posts from spotters in 3 counties. They're converging on your location. Cole, there might be more than 20. There might be 30 or 40. Marcus swore. That changes everything. We can't hold against 40 hostiles even with state police backup. Maybe we don't have to hold, Cole said slowly, an idea forming. Maybe we let them in. Explain, Ramos said. They're expecting an easy transfer. Clear area, compliant business owner, no resistance. So we give them that at first. We let the convoy arrive, let them start the transfer, let them think they're safe. The more people we get on camera, the more vehicles we document, the stronger the case. And when state police move in, they'll have the entire operation boxed in with nowhere to run. That's risky, Jonah said. We'd be surrounded, outnumbered, with nowhere to retreat if things go sideways. It's always been risky, Cole replied. But risk is the price of winning. May had been listening, and now she stepped forward. This is my property. My decision. And I say we do it. We let them come, we document everything, and we trust that when the time comes, good people with badges and guns will be there to finish what we started. The decision was made. Now came the hardest part, waiting for midnight. At 9 p.m., the first bikers appeared. Not the full force, just scouts, 3 Vipers, including Blade, the young one who'd seemed nervous before. They pulled into the lot, engines rumbling, and dismounted with the casual arrogance of men who believed they owned the night. Cole, Marcus, and Jonah were inside, visible, but not threatening. May was behind the counter playing her part as the defeated business owner. Neil was hidden in the office, out of sight, his presence a secret that could get them all killed if discovered. Blade swaggered in his eyes, sweeping the diner. "Place looks quiet," he said to May. "Smart. Reaper's happy you finally learned your lesson." May's smile was brittle. "I learned that fighting doesn't pay the bills." "Damn right." Blade's gaze landed on Cole and Marcus. "You two still here. Thought you'd be long gone by now." "Good pie," Cole said, taking a deliberate bite. "Can't find this quality just anywhere." Blade's expression darkened, but he didn't engage. He was here to scout, not start a fight. He walked the perimeter, checking the exits, the camera angles, the lighting, and his face showed satisfaction when he saw the new floodlights. They were bright, yes, but they were positioned to illuminate the parking lot, not to blind anyone approaching. Exactly what you'd want for security, not for defense. He didn't realize they could be repositioned in seconds. "Looks good," Blade said into his phone. "Area's clear. Targets are compliant. We're green for midnight." He left, and the tension in the diner released like a held breath. "He bought it," Marcus said. "They think we've given up." "Good," Ramos replied. He was listening from his cruiser parked 2 blocks away, coordinating with state police through encrypted radio. "State team is moving into position now. ETA 1140. Everyone stays calm, stays in position, and when the convoy arrives, you do nothing. You're witnesses, not participants. Understood." "Understood," Cole said, but his hand unconsciously checked the weight of the tire iron he'd positioned under his jacket, just in case. The hours between 9 and midnight moved like molasses. May made coffee, no one drank. Jonah checked and rechecked the cameras. Marcus paced like a caged animal, his phone clutched in his hand, texting his daughter every few minutes to make sure she was still safe. At 11:30, Cole's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Last chance, Barrett. Walk away now and your daughter stays safe. Stay, and she becomes an orphan." The threat was clear, immediate, designed to break his resolve in the final moments. Cole showed it to Marcus, whose face hardened. "They're scared. That's desperation, not confidence." "Maybe. Or maybe it's truth. Emily's in Wichita with family. She's got local PD checking on her every hour. Montoya can't reach her, not tonight." Cole wanted to believe that, needed to believe that, but doubt was a poison, and it was spreading through his mind like infection. At 11:45, the state police confirmed position. They were invisible in the darkness. Plainclothes officers in civilian vehicles, tactical teams positioned in the fields beyond the property line, a helicopter on standby 3 miles out. The net was ready. All that remained was for the prey to walk into it. At 11:53, the rumble of engines grew from the east. Cole moved to the window and watched as headlights appeared on the highway, not just bikes, but a convoy. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows surrounded by motorcycles like sharks circling prey. They moved with military precision, maintaining formation, each vehicle positioned to cover the others. "They're here," Cole said quietly. May came to stand beside him, and her hand found his arm, gripping tight. "God help us." The convoy turned into the parking lot, and the floodlights illuminated them in stark detail. 27 motorcycles, Cole counted them, and 3 Escalades with plates obscured by mud. The bikes formed a perimeter while the SUVs pulled into position for the transfer. Doors opened, and men emerged. Reaper led the Vipers, his face showing savage satisfaction. But it was the man stepping from the center SUV who commanded attention. He was average height, average build, with a face that was neither handsome nor ugly, completely forgettable except for the eyes. Those eyes were dead empty of mercy or hesitation, and they swept the area with professional assessment. Reyes. Behind him came more men, 4 from each SUV, all dressed in black tactical gear, all carrying themselves like trained operators. 12 enforcers, plus 27 bikers. 39 hostiles against 3 defenders, and whatever backup could arrive in time. The math was ugly. Reyes walked toward the diner with measured steps, and behind him his men began offloading cargo from the SUVs. Plastic containers carefully sealed each one, marked with innocuous labels that probably hid enough prescription opioids to devastate a small city. Cole's camera was recording from a concealed position, capturing everything. Faces, vehicles, cargo, the whole operation laid bare. This was the evidence they needed: irrefutable, comprehensive, damning. Reyes reached the diner door and paused, his hand on the handle, his dead eyes scanning the interior. He looked at May, at Cole, at Marcus, and something changed in his expression. Not quite recognition, but awareness. The sense of a predator realizing the prey might have teeth. "May Whitaker," Reyes said, his voice accented but clear. "I understand you've been having some trouble with local elements. We're here to resolve that situation." It was a script, a performance for any potential recordings. Plausible deniability wrapped in polite words. May's response was steady, rehearsed. "I appreciate the concern, but everything's fine now." "Good. Good." Reyes stepped inside, and 2 of his men followed. "We'll just use your parking lot for a brief transfer of goods. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. You won't even know we're here." But his eyes were sweeping the diner, cataloging details, and when they landed on the new cameras, something flickered in those dead depths. "New security system," he observed. "Had some break-in." May said, "Can't be too careful." Reyes smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "No, you can't." He turned to Cole and Marcus, and the temperature in the room dropped. "You 2, you're the truckers who've been causing problems." "Just passing through," Cole said evenly. "Of course." Reyes walked closer, and Cole could smell gun oil and cologne. "But see, I have a problem. My organization values discretion. And you 2, you're not very discreet. You've been asking questions, making waves, drawing attention. That's bad for business." "Not our intention," Marcus said. "Intentions don't matter. Results do." Reyes pulled out his phone and pulled up something, then showed it to Cole. It was a photo Emily walking across the Oklahoma State campus, completely unaware she was being watched. The timestamp was from this afternoon, after the attempted grab. "Pretty girl," Reyes said softly. "Would be a shame if something happened to her." Cole's blood turned to ice, but his training held. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't let them see the fear. "You've made your point," he said. "Have I?" Reyes pocketed the phone. "Because I don't think I have. I think you still believe you can win this. That your cameras and your planning and your military training matter against an organization that survived for decades. So let me be crystal clear." He raised his voice so everyone in the diner could hear. "This transfer happens. You watch, you say nothing, and when we leave, you forget everything you saw. Or," his smile was a predator's smile, "or we burn this place to ash with everyone inside. And then we visit your families, your daughters, your sons, your parents, everyone you've ever cared about. We make them pay for your mistakes." The silence that followed was absolute. Outside, through the windows, Cole could see the transfer continuing, containers moving from the SUVs to cargo trucks that had arrived. When had they arrived? He'd been so focused on Reyes, he'd missed their approach. 2 18-wheelers with legitimate company logos, probably stolen or forged, providing the perfect cover for moving contraband across state lines. Jonah was in the corner, his face pale but controlled. His hand was in his pocket, probably on his phone, probably texting Ramos. They're threatening to burn the building. Multiple hostiles. Need backup now. But backup was still minutes away. Minutes they might not have. Reyes turned back to May. I'm told you make excellent pie. While my men work, perhaps I'll try a slice. Apple, if you have it. It was a power play, forcing her to serve him to play the role of the compliant victim, while her world burned down around her. May's hands shook as she cut a slice of pie, as she placed it on a plate, as she set it before Reyes at the counter. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and nodded. Excellent. Your reputation is well deserved. He took another bite. It would be tragic if this place burned. All this history, all these memories reduced to ash because of someone's poor judgment. Cole's mind raced. The state police were close, but not close enough. If Reyes gave the order to torch the diner, now people would die before help arrived. They needed to stall to buy time to keep Reyes talking until the cavalry could get into position. How long have you been running this route? Cole asked, keeping his tone conversational, curious, non-threatening. Reyes looked at him with mild surprise. Curious question. Professional interest. I've been hauling freight for 5 years and I've never seen an operation this smooth. The coordination, the timing, the security. It's impressive. Flattery. Appeal to ego. It was a gamble, but Reyes seemed like a man who enjoyed being recognized for his competence. 3 years on this particular corridor, Reyes said, taking another bite of pie. But the organization's been operating for much longer. We're in 6 states now with plans to expand. It's all about infrastructure. Routes, contacts, officials who understand the value of looking the other way. He was bragging, confident that these witnesses would never talk, would never survive to testify. Must take serious coordination, Marcus added, playing along. Getting all these people in the right place at the right time. It does, but that's what separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs react. Professionals plan. Reyes finished his pie and pushed the plate away. Speaking of plans, mine is almost complete. Another 10 minutes and we'll be gone. You'll never see us again, assuming you've learned your lesson about interference. Outside, Cole could see the transfer was nearly done. The cargo containers were being loaded into the legitimate-looking trucks, the operation almost complete. Once those trucks rolled out, the evidence would scatter across 3 states, and Montoya's network would survive another day. Where was the state police? They should be moving by now, should be closing the net. Unless something had gone wrong. Unless they'd been spotted and the operation aborted. Unless the helicopter. Cole heard it before he saw it, the distinctive thump of rotor blades cutting through night air. Not close yet, but approaching. Reyes heard it too, his head tilting slightly, his expression shifting from confident to concerned. That's not ours, he said quietly to one of his men. The man pulled out a radio and spoke in rapid Spanish. The response made Reyes's face harden. Police helicopter. State police. 3 miles out and closing. Reyes stood abruptly, his hand moving to his jacket. We've been compromised. Everything happened at once. Reyes pulled a gun, compact 9mm, already chambered. His men drew weapons, and suddenly the diner was full of armed hostiles with their backs against the wall. Outside, the Vipers were scrambling engines, roaring to life, the organized operation dissolving into chaos. Who talked? Reyes demanded, his gun pointing at May. Who sold us out? No one, May said, her voice breaking. I swear, I don't. Liar! Reyes grabbed her, pulling her across the counter, his gun pressed to her temple. Someone talked. Someone gave them our route, our timing, everything. Was it you, old woman? Was it these truckers? Cole's hand was moving toward the tire iron, but Reyes saw the motion and swung his gun toward him. Don't move! The standoff crystallized. Reyes with May as a hostage. His men positioned to cover the exits. Outside, the Vipers were scattering, but the tactical trucks couldn't move. They were blocked by state police vehicles that had materialized from the darkness, lights flashing, sirens, wailing. "Let her go," Cole said quietly. "This is over. You're surrounded. No escape, no bargaining position. Let her go, and maybe you survive this." Reyes laughed, and it was the laugh of a man who'd faced worse odds and survived through ruthlessness. "Survive, I'm already dead if Montoya thinks I failed. So I've got nothing to lose." He pressed the gun harder against May's head. "Clear the lot. Pull back the police. Give me safe passage or I paint this diner red." Through the window, Cole could see Chief Ramos approaching with a megaphone state police behind him, tactical teams moving into position. The net was closing, but not fast enough to save May if Reyes decided to pull the trigger. Jonah made his move. The old combat medic had positioned himself near the kitchen, and now he grabbed the fire extinguisher they'd positioned there, not for fires, but for exactly this situation. He yanked the pin and blasted foam directly into Reyes's face. The lieutenant's grip loosened for just a second, and May dropped rolling away as Reyes fired blind. The shot went wide, punching through the front window, and suddenly everyone was moving. Cole was across the room in 2 strides, the tire iron coming down on Reyes's gun hand with bone-breaking force. The weapon clattered away, and Reyes went for a backup piece, but Marcus hit him from the side with a tackle that would have made a linebacker proud. Outside, gunfire erupted. The Vipers were engaging with state police muzzle flashes lighting up the parking lot like deadly fireflies. The tactical trucks were trying to ram through the blockade, but spike strips had been deployed and tires exploded with sharp cracks that punctuated the chaos. Reyes's men inside the diner opened fire, and Cole dove behind the counter, pulling May with him. Bullets chewed through vinyl booths and shattered coffee cups, and somewhere in the chaos, Jonah was yelling for everyone to get down, to stay low, to let the professionals handle it. But there were no professionals in this moment. Just terrified people trying to survive. Marcus had Reyes on the ground, but the lieutenant was a trained fighter, and he broke the hold with a move that spoke to years of close-quarters combat. They grappled, rolling across broken glass, each trying to gain the upper hand. The front door burst open, and state police flooded in tactical gear rifles, raised voices, shouting commands that were almost lost in the din. Reyes's men went down, some surrendering, some taking rounds, all of them overwhelmed by superior force and numbers. But Reyes had one last card to play. He broke free from Marcus' blood streaming from his nose and pulled something from his jacket. Not a gun. A phone. And on the screen, Cole could see a timer counting down from 30 seconds. "Remote detonator." Reyes gasped, his smile bloody and triumphant. "SUVs are rigged with C4, enough to level this building and everything around it. Let me walk or we all die." The timer read 25 seconds. Everything stopped. State police froze. Marcus went pale. Jonah's eyes widened in horror. 20 seconds. "You're bluffing," Cole said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Reyes's thumb hovered over the screen. "Want to find out? 15 seconds. Chief Ramos was on the radio yelling for the bomb squad, but they were 20 minutes out. Fire trucks were being called in, but they wouldn't arrive in time. If those SUVs were really rigged, if Reyes pressed that button, the explosion would kill everyone in a 100-yard radius. 10 seconds. May was crying. Jonah was praying. Marcus was calculating the distance to Reyes, wondering if he could reach him before that thumb descended. 5 seconds. Cole made a decision. Years of training, decades of experience, all crystallizing into a single moment of clarity. He looked at Reyes and saw the truth this man would push that button. He'd kill everyone, including himself, rather than face capture and Montoya's wrath. 3 seconds. Do it, Cole said quietly. Everyone stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Do it, Cole repeated louder. Press the button. Blow us all to hell. Because you know what, you're right. You're already dead. Montoya will kill you for this failure whether you survive or not. So go ahead. Take us with you. Prove you're not just another coward following orders. Reyes's eyes narrowed. His thumb trembled over the screen. 1 second, and Neil Hutchins stumbled out of the office where he'd been hiding, his face streaked with tears, his hands raised. There's no detonator, he shouted. The SUVs aren't rigged. Reyes is bluffing. The words hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then Reyes screamed in fury and lunged at Neil, but he never made it. 4 state police officers hit him simultaneously, driving him to the ground with overwhelming force. The phone clattered away its timer, hitting 0, with no explosion, no fire, nothing but empty threat and broken promises. It was over. The cleanup took hours. Reyes and his men were zip-tied and hauled away. The Vipers were rounded up, some surrendering peacefully, others requiring more persuasive methods. The tactical trucks were searched, revealing enough prescription opioids to trigger federal trafficking charges that would put everyone involved away for decades. May sat on the steps of her diner, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm night, watching as her parking lot transformed into a crime scene. Cole sat beside her, his body aching from places he'd forgotten could hurt. It's really over, she asked. The immediate threat, yes. But Montoya's still out there. This was just one operation. He'll have others. But not here. Not in Maple Ridge. No, not here. As dawn broke over the Oklahoma plains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, May's diner stood battered but unbroken. The windows were shattered, the vinyl booths torn by bullets, the floor littered with evidence markers and the detritus of violence. But it stood. And sometimes Cole thought standing was enough. The sun rose over Maple Ridge like a promise being kept, and for the first time in weeks, May Whitaker watched it without fear knotting her stomach. The parking lot was still cordoned off with yellow tape state police vehicles still processing evidence, but the Vipers were gone. Reyes was gone. The immediate threat had dissolved with the dawn, but Cole Barrett knew better than to mistake a battle won for a war ended. He stood in the wreckage of May's diner, surveying damage that would take weeks to repair. Bullet holes pocked the walls like ugly constellations. The front window was a spider web of cracks held together by safety film. 3 booths would need complete replacement, and the coffee maker May's pride and joy, a vintage model from 1987, had taken a round straight through its heart and died, leaking water and grounds across the counter. Insurance will cover most of it, May said, though her voice suggested she didn't quite believe it. I've got the policy, the documentation. Chief Ramos said the state might even have a victims' compensation fund for businesses damaged during criminal operations. Might, Marcus repeated, leaning against the counter with an ice pack pressed to his ribs, where Reyes had landed a solid kidney shot during their fight. Government promises and might are 2 words that go together too often. Jonah was cataloging the damage with the same methodical precision he'd used for everything else, his notebook filling with estimates and measurements. Conservative estimate, 40,000 in repairs, maybe 50 if we find structural damage once we open up the walls. May's face went pale. Even with insurance, even with possible state assistance, those numbers represented months of lost business, depleted savings, and uncertainty that could break what violence hadn't. We'll figure it out, Cole said, though he wasn't sure how. His own rig was due in Kansas City in 36 hours, with a load he'd never picked up. Marcus had missed 2 deliveries. Their lives, the ones they'd put on pause to make this stand, were waiting, and they couldn't stay in Maple Ridge forever. The reality of that hit harder than Cole expected. Chief Ramos arrived around 7 a.m., looking like he hadn't slept. His uniform was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, but there was something different in his bearing. A weight lifted, maybe, or a burden shared. "State Police want statements from all of you," he said, setting down a thermos of coffee, the good stuff from his personal stash, not the station sludge. DEA's involved now too, since we've got pharmaceutical trafficking. FBI's sniffing around because of the interstate nature of the operation. This is going to be a long process. "How long?" Marcus asked. "Months, maybe years before it all goes to trial. Reyes is already lawyered up, claiming he was just providing security for what he thought was a legitimate transport. The Vipers are pointing fingers at each other. And Montoya," Ramos's expression darkened. "Montoya's a ghost. We've got no real name, no photographs, no physical evidence he even exists. Just testimony from Neil, and a good defense attorney will tear that apart." "So, they might walk," Jonah said quietly. "Some of them, maybe. But we've got Reyes on attempted murder assault with a deadly weapon, and enough weapons charges to put him away for 20 years, even if the trafficking doesn't stick. The Vipers are looking at RICO charges, organized crime statutes. Even if Montoya stays free, his operation here is done. That's not nothing." It wasn't nothing, but it felt incomplete. Like finishing a puzzle only to discover the final piece was missing. Neil Hutchins emerged from a state police vehicle escorted by 2 federal agents who looked like they'd been carved from granite and taught to scowl professionally. His face was drawn, his eyes hollow, and when he saw May, he stopped walking. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I helped destroy your life, your town, but I'm so sorry." May looked at him for a long moment, and Cole could see the war happening behind her eyes. Anger, betrayal, and beneath it all, the recognition that Neil was broken too, just in different ways. "You helped end it," she said finally. "When it mattered, when you could have stayed hidden, you spoke up. That doesn't erase what you did, but it's something." Neil nodded, tears streaming down his face, and let the agents lead him away. He was facing charges too conspiracy accessory to trafficking, but his cooperation would likely earn him a reduced sentence and witness protection. A new life in a new place, though. Whether he'd find redemption, there was anyone's guess. The morning brought more visitors. Tom Henderson and Sarah Chen arrived with a crew of farmers, not to install lights this time, but to help clean. They brought tools, supplies, and the kind of quiet determination that defined rural communities. Within an hour, they were pulling out damaged booths, sweeping up glass, and beginning the slow work of rebuilding. "You don't have to do this," May protested, but Tom just smiled. "Yeah, we do. You stood up. That matters, and when someone stands up for all of us, we stand with them." By noon, the diner looked less like a crime scene and more like a construction site. The yellow tape was gone, replaced by the sounds of hammers and drills and people working together towards something better than what had been broken. Rita the trucker, who'd live-streamed the confrontation, returned with a check. "Took up a collection," she said, pressing it into May's hands. "Drivers from 6 states. Everyone who saw what happened. Everyone who was inspired by what you did. It's not everything, but it's a start." May looked at the check, and her knees went weak. $15,000. From strangers who'd never eaten her pie, never sat in her booths, but who understood what she represented. "I can't," May started. "You can, and you will," Rita said firmly. "Because this isn't just about you anymore. It's about everyone who's ever been pushed around and told to shut up and take it. You showed us we don't have to, so take the money, fix your diner, and keep being the person who wouldn't back down." Ellie called around 1 p.m., her voice shaking with relief. I saw the news. I can't believe you actually did it. You stopped them." "We all stopped them," Cole said, because it was true. Ellie's documentation, her courage in recording evidence despite her fear, had been crucial. "When are you coming back?" "Soon. Maybe next week, when I know it's really safe." "But Cole," her voice dropped. "My son asked me why we had to leave, why we were running, and I told him the truth. That sometimes bad people try to scare good people into silence, but we can't let them. He's 6 years old, and he understood that. If he can be brave, so can I." After she hung up, Cole found himself outside staring at the road where the vipers had first appeared days ago. It felt like a lifetime. He'd come to Maple Ridge for pie, and ended up fighting a war he hadn't known existed. Marcus joined him, still holding the ice pack. "Thinking about leaving?" "Thinking about staying," Cole admitted. "Which is crazy. I've got routes obligations, a life on the road." "Had a life on the road," Marcus corrected. "Past tense, because I'm thinking the same thing. What if this is where we're supposed to be? Not rolling through other people's towns, but actually being part of one." It was a dangerous thought, the kind that took root and grew until it changed everything. Jonah approached from the diner, wiping his hands on a rag. "I talked to the county health board. They're willing to fund a rural safety initiative teaching small businesses how to document threats, coordinate with law enforcement, protect themselves from organized crime. They want me to run it." "That's good," Cole said. "You'd be perfect for that." "I would, but I can't do it alone. I need people with real-world experience, people who've faced these threats and know how to respond." Jonah looked at them meaningfully. "People like you two?" The offer hung in the air between them, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. The afternoon brought a surprise visitor, a woman in her 40s with a federal badge and eyes that had seen too much, Special Agent Dana Reeves' FBI Organized Crime Division. She sat across from them in May's partially restored diner and laid out a truth they'd all suspected but hadn't wanted to believe. "Fernando Montoya is real," she said, pulling out a thin file. "We've been tracking him for 6 years. He runs a distribution network spanning 9 states, moving everything from prescription pills to heroin to methamphetamine. Conservative estimate, his organization generates $50 million annually." "And you can't catch him?" Marcus asked. "We can't even find him. He operates through cutouts and intermediaries." Reyes was the closest we've ever gotten to his inner circle, and even Reyes has never met him face to face. Everything's done through encrypted communications, dead drops, and a cell structure that makes it impossible to roll up the whole organization, even if we catch individual operators. "So this was for nothing," May said bitterly. "We risked everything, and the man responsible gets away." "Not for nothing," Reeves countered. "You destroyed his Maple Ridge operation. You exposed his methods. And you gave us something we've never had before, evidence of his pattern. The way he softened targets, the infrastructure he builds, the officials he corrupts. Now we can look for that pattern in other places, anticipate his moves, maybe get ahead of him for once." "Maybe," Cole said, echoing Marcus's earlier cynicism about government promises. Reeves smiled thinly. "I know how that sounds. But here's what I can tell you for certain. Montoya's hurting. This operation was a major artery for him. You cut it, and he's bleeding money and credibility. His other operators are scared, now wondering if they're next. That fear is a weapon we can use." She stood to leave, then paused. "There's something else. We intercepted communications from Montoya's network. He's issued a burn notice on Reyes, marked him for death, for failing to protect the operation. If Reyes is smart, he'll flip, give us everything he knows in exchange for protective custody. When he does, you'll be called to testify. All of you. This isn't over." After she left, the weight of that settled over them like a shroud. Testimony meant coming back, reliving the violence facing defense attorneys who'd try to paint them as vigilantes who'd overstepped. It meant years of their lives tied to a case that might never deliver justice. But it also meant Montoya would know their names, their faces, their importance to the case against him. "We're targets now," Jonah said quietly. "For as long as Montoya's free, we're loose ends he'll want tied up." The thought should have been terrifying, but Cole found himself oddly calm. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the realization that he'd been a target from the moment he'd decided not to drive past May's diner. The threat had always been there. Now it just had a name. Evening brought a town meeting. Chief Ramos had organized it, inviting everyone in Maple Ridge to hear what had happened and what it meant for their future. The high school gymnasium filled with over 300 people, nearly half the town's population, and the air buzzed with fear, anger, and fragile hope. May stood at the podium, her hands gripping the edges to keep them from shaking. "3 weeks ago, I thought I was going to lose everything," she began. "My diner, my home, my town. I thought the only choice was to submit or run. But then 3 strangers showed me there was a third option: stand up." She told them everything. The threats, the intimidation, the careful planning, and desperate execution. She talked about Cole and Marcus and Jonah, about Ellie's courage, and Neil's redemption. She talked about the farmers who'd brought light to the darkness, and the truckers who'd formed a wall of steel and solidarity. "What happened at my diner wasn't just about me," she said, her voice growing stronger. "It was about all of us, about every small town that's been bled dry by people who think power comes from fear. And we proved them wrong. We proved that ordinary people working together, following the law, documenting everything and trusting the system, we can win." The applause started slowly, then built to a roar that shook the gymnasium rafters. But it was what came after that surprised Cole. One by one, people stood to share their own stories. The auto shop owner who'd been extorted, the grocery store manager who'd paid protection money for 2 years, the teacher whose car had been vandalized after she'd complained to police, the librarian who'd seen the Vipers dealing drugs in the parking lot and been too scared to report it. Maple Ridge had been suffering in silence, each person thinking they were alone, that their fear was a personal failing rather than a shared burden. "No more," Tom Henderson said, standing in the crowd. "We do what May did. We document, we report, we support each other. We make it harder to victimize us, then it's worth trying." Chief Ramos stood at the back of the gymnasium, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of confession. "I failed you. I knew what was happening, and I didn't have the resources or the courage to stop it alone. But May and her friends showed me that we don't have to work alone. State police, federal agencies, community organization together, we're stronger than any criminal network." The meeting ended with the formation of a rural safety coalition. Businesses would install cameras and share footage. Residents would report suspicious activity without fear of retaliation. The county would fund training and equipment, and Jonah would coordinate it all, transforming from combat medic to community defender. As people filtered out into the night, May found Cole sitting on the gymnasium steps, staring at the stars. "You're leaving, aren't you?" she asked. "I have to. Got a rig that won't drive itself, loads waiting, a life that's been on pause." "But you'll come back." "For the trial, I mean." Cole nodded. "For the trial. And maybe," he paused, choosing words carefully, "maybe just to visit. See how the pie's holding up." May smiled, and it was the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in days. "The pie'll be here, so will I." Marcus and Jonah joined them, and for a moment the 4 of them sat in comfortable silence, watching Maple Ridge settle into night. Lights in windows, cars pulling out of the parking lot, the ordinary rhythm of a small town that had faced darkness and survived. I talked to my daughter, Marcus said quietly. Told her I might be settling down somewhere. She asked if I'd lost my mind. What did you tell her? Jonah asked. That maybe I found it instead. The next morning, Cole and Marcus prepared to leave. Their rigs sat in May's parking lot, which was really May's parking lot again, not a crime scene or a battlefield, but just a place for trucks to rest and drivers to refuel. May had cooked breakfast eggs, bacon pancakes, the works. Ellie had returned overnight, unable to stay away, and she served the coffee with hands that no longer shook. The diner was still damaged, still bearing the scars of violence, but it was alive again, functioning, defiant. The contractor says 6 weeks for full repairs, May told them between bites. But we can reopen in 2 with temporary fixes. Can't let the bastards keep us closed longer than necessary. Language, May, Jonah teased, and she laughed. After everything we've been through, I think I've earned the right to say bastards. Neil Hutchins had one final meeting with them before entering witness protection. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by guilt and the weight of starting over. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to know what you did here. It mattered. Not just for Maple Ridge, but for me. You showed me it's never too late to choose differently. I'll carry that with me wherever I end up. May shook his hand, and that simple gesture felt like absolution neither of them fully believed in yet, but both were willing to try for. Chief Ramos stopped by as Cole and Marcus were doing their final rig checks. State police want to create a task force, he said, dedicated to hunting Montoya and dismantling his network. They want you two to consult, share your tactical knowledge, help train other communities to resist. We're truck drivers, not consultants, Marcus said. You're whatever you choose to be, and right now you're the men who proved organized crime can be beaten with courage and documentation. Ramos extended his hand. Think about it. The offer stands. As Cole climbed into his rig, feeling the familiar weight of the steering wheel breathing in the diesel and lavender air freshener, something felt different. The road ahead was the same asphalt ribbon it had always been, but his relationship to it had changed. It wasn't freedom anymore, it was just motion, and he'd learned in Maple Ridge that sometimes standing still took more courage than running ever would. He pulled out his phone and made a call he'd been putting off. Emily, it's Dad. I need to tell you about something that happened, about some choices I made and why I made them. Marcus was on his own phone talking to his daughter, having the same conversation. Two men confronting the reality that their actions had consequences beyond themselves, that standing up meant becoming examples their children would either be proud of or burdened by. The rigs rolled out of Maple Ridge as the sun climbed toward noon, and May stood in her parking lot watching them go. But this time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a pause, a breath before the next chapter. Because 3 days later, Cole's phone rang with a Kansas number. Mr. Barrett. This is Sarah from the Maple Ridge Business Council. We've been talking, and we have a proposition. The town needs a security consultant, someone to help businesses protect themselves, to coordinate with law enforcement, to build the kind of defense that stopped the Vipers. We're prepared to offer a full-time position, competitive salary housing assistance if needed. Interested? Cole looked at the highway stretching before him, then at the exit sign for the town he'd just delivered to. Another nameless stop, another load, another mile of road that all looked the same. Send me the details, he said. Marcus got a similar call. Jonah's rural safety initiative needed experienced personnel, and the county was willing to fund 2 more positions. 2 men who understood threat assessment, tactical response, and the difference between violence and necessary force. 6 weeks later, Cole Barrett stood in May's diner fully repaired, Now the bullet holes patched, new booths installed, even a new coffee maker that May insisted would never be as good as the old one. The lunch rush was in full swing, truckers and locals mixing, and the sound of conversation and laughter filled spaces that had been silent with fear. Ellie brought him pineapple, still the best in 3 counties, and he took a bite that tasted like home. Marcus sat across from him, reviewing incident reports from the Rural Safety Initiative. They'd identified 3 other towns showing the same patterns of intimidation that had plagued Maple Ridge. Early intervention documentation and coordination with state police had stopped the problems before they metastasized. "We're making a difference," Marcus said. "Small victories, but they add up." Jonah joined them fresh from a training session where he'd taught local business owners how to use security cameras and create evidence chains that would hold up in court. 2 more towns want the program. We're going to need more personnel. "I might know some retired operators looking for purpose," Cole said. "The old network, the soldiers who'd come home and struggled to find meaning in civilian life. Maybe this was it, protection without war service, without deployment, standing guard over communities instead of foreign soil." May rang the bell at the counter, the one she'd installed to mark special occasions, and the diner quieted. "I want to make an announcement," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Tonight we're launching something new. Drivers and Deputies Night, first Friday of every month, free pie for truckers and law enforcement. Because what we learned here is that keeping a community safe takes everyone working together." The applause was spontaneous and heartfelt, but it was the second announcement that made Cole's throat tight. "And we're establishing a scholarship," May continued, "for students studying criminal justice law enforcement or community service, named after the people who stood up when standing up mattered, the Barrett Hall Pike Scholarship for Civic Courage." Cole hadn't known. Neither had Marcus or Jonah, based on their stunned expressions. "May," Cole started, but she held up a hand. "You gave me my life back. You gave this town its dignity back. Let us give something to the next generation. Let them learn that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they refuse to be afraid." That evening, as the sun set over Maple Ridge, Cole walked to the spot where his rig had first parked, where he'd seen the vipers sprawled across handicapped spaces, and made the decision not to look away. The motorcycles were gone. The threats were gone. But the memory remained, and with it the knowledge that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was the choice to act despite it. His phone buzzed. Text from Emily, Dad. "I'm so proud of you. What you did, what you're still doing, it matters. Love you." He pocketed the phone and looked at the diner, at the lights glowing warm in the windows, at the people inside, living their lives free from intimidation. Special Agent Reeves had been right. Montoya was still out there, still operating, still a threat. The trial was coming, and with it, the danger of retaliation. But Maple Ridge was ready now. They'd learned that fear was a choice, and they'd chosen differently. The quiet rig that wouldn't back down had become the quiet town that wouldn't break. And somewhere on a highway far from Oklahoma, on encrypted channels and in dark rooms, Fernando Montoya was learning a lesson that would cost him. His empire respect was earned through service, not extorted through fear. The old way was dying town by town, stand by stand, one act of courage at a time. In May's diner, the evening rush settled into a comfortable rhythm. Ellie poured coffee with steady hands. Jonah discussed security protocols with a neighboring town's police chief. Marcus helped May plan the expansion of the scholarship program. And Cole Barrett, retired Special Forces captain turned community defender, sat in his corner booth with sightlines to both exits and took a bite of the best apple pie in 3 counties. The road had brought him here. Purpose kept him here, and the quiet knowledge that he'd found something worth more than miles a place to stand people to stand with, and the certainty that sometimes the greatest battles are fought, not with weapons, but with the simple, stubborn refusal to let fear win. Outside, the Oklahoma plains stretched toward horizons painted in twilight colors. Somewhere out there, other towns were facing their own vipers, their own moments of choice between submission and resistance. But now they had a blueprint. Now they had proof it could be done. And that made all the difference. The quiet rig had made its stand. The quiet town had held the line. And their story was being told in truck stops and diners across 6 states, spreading like dawn across darkness, a reminder that ordinary people armed with nothing but courage and community could stop even the most organized intimidation. Respect was earned, never extorted. Maple Ridge had taught that lesson well. And the lesson was spreading one pie slice, one conversation, one act of defiance at a time. The end, but also the beginning of something better.